and other kinds of providers should not be allowed to discriminate against folks because of sexual orientation or sexual or gender identity. We need to be very aggressive on that because that is a problem, that is an issue, and it doesn't get talked about a lot, but I know there is that problem out there. We need to also be very sure we have, as a long-term type of thing, making sure we have medical providers who are members of the GLBT community to have special awareness and understanding of the medical needs of those folks.
One of the key considerations that we have in this front is access to quality housing and quality nursing homes. And one of the things that we want to make sure of is we have an Iowa Civil Rights Act and an Iowa Civil Rights Commission that is there to stand up for our LGBTQ community when they are denied access to quality housing, when they're denied access to quality healthcare services in their golden years. We also want to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to make those environments as safe as possible. Around the time that it was announced that this state, despite going through mid-year budget cuts, despite going through rainy day funds, we were going to have $20 million handed out in coupons to Apple, the largest corporation on the face of the planet in terms of wealth. It was also announced that the state ombudsman's office was not going to be able to respond personally to nursing home violations. You can't smell violations or see violations from a phone call. And we have to do everything we can to protect vulnerable Iowans who need the state there to protect them.
So, you know, our state has one of the highest average age populations in the country. And it gets increasingly old. So this is a big issue in our state, elder care in general. And how we treat our elder population is a growing issue. Governor Reynolds has refused to budget enough money to allow for in-person inspections of nursing homes. You've read about it in the newspapers the last couple of days. And it's been happening for several months now. At the same time, she's also reduced the rights of nursing home residents to be able to sue for any violations. It made it very difficult for somebody who lives in a nursing home having their civil rights violated to bring a suit against it. That's not how we should be treating Iowans. That's certainly not how we should be treating our elderly. Every Iowan deserves a dignity to be who they are at every stage of their lives, and they shouldn't have to be forced into the closet because they're seeking assisted care or nursing facilities. We need to stop that.
I support universal single-payer health care, and it shouldn't discriminate against anyone based on their age, gender identity, or anything for that matter, because it's a fundamental human right for one thing. But we also know that LGBTQ plus community elders face significant challenges as they grow older. Probably mostly because they grew up in an era where they had to hide who they were and felt more discrimination and anxiety over the course of their lifetime. And so as they age and need medical treatments or care, they actually may revert and not want to share who they are with their healthcare providers. So we need clear, competent, culturally competent, educated healthcare professionals delivering care to our LGBTQ plus communities to make sure they get the care they need no matter what age they are.
The challenge in this area cuts across multiple areas, and the needs of elderly folks who are members of the LGBTQ plus community just highlight a deficit in general that we have in the state of Iowa and in society for our seniors. Universal health care, the single payer option, is one issue. Housing is one issue. Communities and developers not putting in resources and being creative with developments that provide services and supports and things that seniors in general want to do in a community or in neighborhoods are things that are not addressed by our society. And so those are the types of things, not only with the bully pulpit, but even working with organizations like Iowa State University Extension and Outreach that does community economic development, to work with folks in communities to make sure that these types of issues are being addressed, or at least part of the discussion. So as a community and society in the state, we need to start not only recognizing and honoring who we are, that we all can be who we are, but how we're going to live is quality of life.
My grandmother lived over 100 years, and her whole life, she was born before we had the Federal Reserve, and her whole life she was waiting for government to figure out health care. And if we're waiting for that, I think we could wait another 100 years, or I think I have a economic platform that will help you, whether it's your first paycheck or whether you're closer to your first or your last paycheck. We could wait for the government to learn how to balance a checkbook, or we could lead by example and let people spend more time with their chosen doctor, let people pay them the best possible price in cash, and cut out a lot of the bureaucracy. And I think just moving towards why are elders in this position that they can't save money? What is this massive inflation and what's causing it? Return to sound money, sound currency. We have to budget our books. Why shouldn't the government have to do that?
You know, when I think of seniors, our seniors deserve our respect. And I think of the LGBTQ community. These are the people who brought us the rights we now have in our LGBTQ community. They're the ones who protested. They're the ones who were at Stonewall. They're the ones who were at the Pride parades when no one was at the Pride parade. That's what they are. And we have to make sure that we have the kind of policies that help them not experience that same discrimination again when they get into senior living and into nursing homes. And everyone's exactly right. The Reynolds administration, the Republican legislature, is absolutely not making this a priority. It needs to be enforced, that any discrimination at that level. Because Nate, you're right, these gentlemen and ladies many times don't have the families to take care of them and need to have that senior living. And we have got to pay dues, really, to them, since they got us where we are now.
Just a quick note, I've had 2 great-grandmothers live to be over 100, so if you're casting your vote on that one. I think one of the, this is a very important question, I think one of the first things we can do is listen to them, listen to people, listen to your neighbors, see what struggles they are having. One of the problems we've had with our current budget right now is we see these massive cuts that have occurred. Your taxes aren't going down, they're giving money to Apple, whoever else wants a corporate handout. But what we see is the government is not actually investigating fraud, abuse of our elders. We see that happen time and time again. We see discrimination happen, and it happens by our own government. And they'll ignore the issues like this, but I bet that if Apple came to them with an issue that they wanted a little bit more tax welfare, corporate welfare, I bet they would be quick to give it. We've got to listen to people and all people of Iowa, and I think that's one thing that we can start to do.
Well, when you start to think about which groups of Iowans are most neglected by this administration, the list is pretty darn long. But our older Iowans have to be right at the top. When we have a growing elderly population, what makes sense about cutting the funding for our area agents on aging? Grounding the long-term care ombudsman. Our goal should be about helping our older Iowans stay in their homes longer. We have to address the direct care workforce issue in this state. The Medicaid privatization and the rates for Medicaid reimbursement all contribute to a 60% annual turnover in our direct care workforce, which are grossly underpaid for the work they do and need more training and higher pay to keep a more consistent workforce to support our older Iowans. And this is particularly compounded for our LGBT community, who have a higher rate of living alone without the caregiver support, that are more dependent upon a government that cares about older Iowans, and this one does not.
All right, this is a kind of a fun little round of questions. This is more from my own sense of humor. First, raise your hand if you agree with this. You pledge to speak at and support the Governor's Conference on LGBTQ Youth. Oh, yeah. Also raise your hand if you agree, if elected, to march in the Capital City Pride Parade. And Senator Bolton, I'll give you a serious one after this to start out, but if the election came down to a lip sync for your life, what song would you lip sync to? And you just have to name the song. You don't have to say why.
Just have to name the song. I want to say why, I
Oh,
guess.
all right.
Give me a chance to talk. You know what? I'd say The Gambler. And I'd say The Gambler, and I think Kim Reynolds ought to know when to fold them because she's never played her hand in this game. So I think that's very appropriate. I think we got her on the run. We're going to keep her on the run.
My song would be the Rolling Stones' Street Fighting Man, because my wife likes low action.
I'm speechless. I would say it's probably We Are Family, because we are, and we have to stick together if we're going to create the change in our state that we want to see, and it's going to take all of us to make that change, so we are family.
I would say Change the World, Eric Clapton and Babyface. While the song is about individuals and their relationship to each other, that's what our Let's Be Iowa campaign is about. Knowing our individual responsibility and feeling towards each other, but knowing that we are stronger together. Let's be Iowa.
I'm going to go with I Want to Break Free by Queen. And I think the way things currently are, it makes pretty much all Iowans feel in one way or another they want to break free from the kind of boxes that we get put in. And I don't know if I could make as attractive of a female as John Deacon did in that music video, but I would at least sing it there.
Well, first I want to say that I've spoken at the governor's conference already, so I definitely would be there as governor. I've marched in the Pride Parade already, so I definitely would march there as governor. And I would say We Are the Champions is the song I would say, and that's because any one of us would be a better governor than the governor we have right now.
I would have to go with Highway to Hell, because that's what we're on right now. And if we don't change direction and get rid of Kim Reynolds, that's where we're gonna end up. And I don't want to be on that highway, and with the Republicans raising the gas tax, I don't think we can even afford to drive on it.
It's a burning thing, it makes a fire. Bound by wild desires, I fell into a ring of fire. Johnny Cash, that's what I'd say.
But fun side of me wanted to see Rocky Horror Picture Show. That doesn't really make any sense. Which side are you on by Pete Seeger?
All right, now back to the serious questions. Intermission. So religious exemption or a license to discriminate is the belief that a service from a business can be denied based on a business owner's specific religious beliefs. The most common scenario that plays out and in the news is a wedding cake baker who does not want to bake a cake for a same-sex couple. What is your stance on religious exemptions, and what would you say to that wedding cake baker who's refusing to bake a cake for a same-sex couple? And we'll start this question with Senator Bolton because he had a funny one, so we'll give you a serious one to start out.
Well, the first thing I'll say is, haven't we had this fight before? Haven't we seen this in terms of civil rights and equality under law and access to public accommodation? Why in the world would we allow discrimination to happen in businesses across this state? If we're going to welcome the next generation of Iowans to come in here for a quality of life that we can be proud of, we're not going to do it by having these backwards type agenda items coming through our state. So absolutely, I would support making sure that we stand up for the Iowa Constitution as well as the U.S. Constitution, and make sure that we do not allow legalized discrimination in any form in this state.
clearly everybody should be treated fairly and consistently. And this kind of a response by the community, by the legislature,